I'd like to thank the CPI for organising the first off and asking me on to speak. And I'm not used to speaking in public, so I'll stick to the script as much as I can. The reasons why cultural workers appear to have little to say about this deep economic and social crisis is very complex, as from the two very good speakers beforehand. I'm going to look at popular culture, mainly music, and a little bit about television as well. Over the past 30 years or so in Britain and Ireland, there's been a battle of ideas. One unlike the past, where media bosses openly bragged about using their newspapers as tools for propaganda. It has become far more subtle and persuasive nowadays, resulting in the narrowing of what is and isn't acceptable through a process of depoliticisation. This phenomenon can be seen everywhere in our lives. For example, in sport, we're told politics and sport don't mix, particularly in football. And in the news we see bank bailouts, austerity, NAMA, whatever, they're just presented as common sense and there's no other way. As a result, we're presented again with a narrowing of opinion where consumers, capitalists and middle class values dominate and are expressed as the norm, common sense and non-political. The depoliticisation of culture and ideas is deeply ideological. It's dangerous, damaging and has unsurprisingly filtered into television and music. Closer to home, some of you might have seen the recent RTE documentary on Ireland's rappers, which had the potential to be a very insightful and interesting documentary about a topic which was of great value. Yet RTE went for a hat job essentially, poking fun and ridiculing those involved, subtly and not so subtly, and played on the stereotypes associated with working class people. There was one scene in particular where they made sure they got a shot of the young guys from, I think it was from Ballymun, and made sure that they had the ponies in the background. Was this situation ever different? Sort of, really. In the 60s and 70s, British writers set out to depict experiences from working class life which had previously been ignored and attempted to reflect it more fairly. Through shows like The Lump, Cathy Come Home, Days of Hope and even Coronation Street, they challenged the existing views of the status quo, pushed the boundaries of both ideas and the art form to the limit, and to openly discuss political ideas. This was seen across the spectrum into popular TV and radio shows as well, with shows like Till Death Us Do Part, Steptoe Son and Citizen Smith. This was done against the backdrop of hostility. It wasn't an easy task. The BBC vetted all its writers at the time and even had an MI5 agent called the Man in the Mac who vetted subversives, and it was in no way an easy task. Politics appeared to be everywhere in TV and radio shows. We discussed, challenged and so on, and we rarely if ever see that today within the scope of popular television or radio. Now, I'm open to correction on this, but I'd be very surprised if the household tax, the austerity treat or the water tax even got a fleeting mention in Fair Sea. Yet it can be overheard up and down the pubs of Ireland, been discussed and so on, and so it's not reflective of the everyday lives of ordinary working people. This is in contrast to the celebrity death of Michael Jackson, who made its way into the dialogue of EastEnders and Coronation Street, again emphasising the trivialisation of ideas. Something changed dramatically in the structures of broadcasting in the 1980s as Thatcherite in Britain, as the Thatcherite onslaught took hold, when the ideas of social mobility and individualism particularly took root. In BBC's Left of Friend documentary on left-wing drama, I think it was about 3 years ago, Ken Loach and others felt this led to devaluation of ideas, to a sermon of blandness, a lack of imaginative ideas and a sedatory effect. In Ireland, meanwhile, it could be argued that RT has never really recovered from the purges of the early 70s aimed at rooting out Republicans and their sympathisers, and so inflicting a kind of self-censorship and a very class-based projection as the art forms themselves. In his book, Flat Earth News, Nick Davis talks about how journalists today are overworked, underpaid, compared to the journalists of the past, whereby the news industry has become one of journalism rather than journalism churning out just garbage unchecked every day. These pressures no doubt play a part in the music and film journalists and DJs and TV presenters. It is the exertion of these pressures which feeds a bias towards an over-reliance of official sources by allowing PR companies to influence reporting. This can be seen with big stars, big labels, they dominate the news and entertainment. Is that journalism has become an almost exclusively middle-class profession. The Guardian ran a piece recently where it cited, I couldn't get the figures, but it's above 90% of graduates in the UK from this background. It's likely to be a fairly similar figure if not worse in this country. In music. The 60s saw the emergence of artists willing to push a political message. The likes of Dylan or Lennon are good examples, or even the Kinks or the Small Faces, who, while not overtly political, portrayed issues and frustrations within working class life. Then there was the explosion of punk from The Clash, Crass, Stiff Little Fingers. They all had a message and something to say. This continued into the 80s with The Jam, The Smiths and many more. Into the 90s then with the likes of Pulp, Rage Against the Machine and the Manics. Challenging the political and social opinions of those in powerful positions is not easy. The establishment also are very clever in how they respond to these threats, both political and financial, to the stranglehold of their control and their output. This in itself may also put people off from choosing to say certain things because it means they might make a living from their art. Public Enemy, for example, who opened the eyes of a generation to black struggle and black politics in the US. Initially it was met with a violent backlash from Middle America and record companies. But later labels decided to repackage hip-hop but without the political message, and gangster became marketable and the materialist vibe also took hold. Another is Rough Trade Records, which very importantly broke the distribution stranglehold of the major labels in Britain in the late 70s and 80s. In response, these record companies set up their own indie labels, like just prints, and they use them to market their own that was indie, and they post artists away then. And another is John Lennon, who is now seen as a man of peace, yet his opposition to US imperialism, radical politics and support for civil rights campaigns in Ireland and elsewhere are overlooked. They've made him safe, nullifying what made him who he was, so that they can sell him. Although there are many artists, respected artists, some with a bigger impact than others, who continue to comment and challenge the world around them. In this country we have the likes of Captain Moonlight or Jinx Lennon, Damien Dempsey, while in Britain the Manics, still Akala, King Blues, Billy Bragg, and there's also still plenty of acts who will fly this social commentary flag of the Kinks. People like the Streets and Arctic Monkeys, their first albums depicted modern working class life, and the Rifles, Jamie T and others continue to do this. It is true that the airwaves and TV screens are dominated by artists who have little or nothing to say about the crisis we find ourselves in. But from this short snapshot we can see a little bit maybe why. It's also true there are still plenty of artists willing to speak out and use their music to inform people about real issues. There are very real underground scenes and cultures all around us which are ignored by the mainstream media, but importantly they still exist. How can all this be changed? That's a much bigger question than I can answer.